weekend for what the Wonder Woman Chi Chi. So let me officially welcome you to a segment we call a short in the arm, with motivational talk. And with me in the studio is Jonah Mungoshi. He's a life success coach, management consultant, a workshop facilitator, management or leadership trainer, and motivational speaker. Well, good morning.
Good morning, Eve. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's awesome to be here.
It's always a pleasure to have you in the studio.
Great.
So, right, today we're talking about a different perspective.
Different perspective. So, this is a very important subject because no matter what you do in life, in order for you to succeed, you need to work with people. It's about managing people, it's about relating with people, it's about building mutually beneficial relationships with people. So, what I found out is that of all the resources, of all the factors that a person works with, the hardest to get along with, the hardest to manage is the human being. So you may have machines, you may have all sorts of other resources that are at your disposal, but working with human beings is arguably the most challenging of all things we can do. And when I looked at my life, and by the way, I'm 56, so I've been in this world for more than half a century.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I realized that the turning point in most of the situations where I had problems with fellow human beings occurred when I was able to assume a different perspective. So, a different perspective is about looking at a situation through the eyes of another person rather than through your own. So, let me give you an example. Many, many years ago, when I was still in the corporate world, I was head of IT at CBZ Bank, and there was a turnaround that was done for this institution, and overnight things changed. We had investors who came from another country, and as part of the investment package into the bank, they brought with them their own people who were now executive directors. So I found myself reporting to an executive director. His name was Mr. Len Loader. And from the word go, we didn't get along.
Oh, my.
And it got so bad that I dusted up my CV and started looking for another job. Until I came across an article on the internet and I thought, hey, wait a minute, let me try what this article said. And
Okay.
essentially, what I did is I put myself in this man's shoes. And I suddenly realized how I was contributing to the strained relationship. One of the things that used to rub him the wrong way is what we can call a pet peeve. Something that really, really rubs you the wrong way is when people didn't respond to his emails. So he would
Ah.
send an email to me, and he would send to the other guys. There were four of us who reported to him. There was Jabu, there was Mike, there was Ted, and myself. And I then, what actually happened is I made an appointment, say, may I see you, Mr. Loader? I just want to get to understand some of the factors that are influencing, how we are working in this division. This was called Operations Division. And when I went to see him, and then I asked him about the system he had a system for keeping track of any issue that he raises. And then he showed me, he said, listen, when I send out an email to you and I want a response, I print out I print out a pink copy. He was the only person in the whole bank who ordered pink bond paper.
Oh,
I
wow.
print out a pink
Okay.
copy and I pile them. And when you respond to me, I print out a white copy, I staple it to the pile to the pink copy, and then I file them away. He was from the old school. And then he showed me, he says, look, this pile here is for those unresponded or emails that Ted hasn't responded to. It was a very small pile. This one is for Jabu. It was a very small pile. This one's for Mike. It was a very small pile. And this one is for you.
And it's a big
And it's
pile.
a big pile. And then, I then said, listen, Mr. Loader, let me see if I understand where the source of our problem is.
All right.
From my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, it frustrates you when I don't respond to your emails on time. And worse still, when you send a follow-up email and I don't respond, it really drives you mad. Am I right? And he said yes. And tell you what, that was the turning point in our relationship. I had managed to put myself in his shoes and understand his pain from his point of view. And from then onwards, whenever I received an email from him, that thought was fresh in my mind. That feeling that he gets when he doesn't get responded to on time was live in me. And as a result, I would be motivated, I would be pushed to respond. So, this is what I mean by different perspective.
Okay.
When you are able to put yourself in other people's shoes and look at the situation from their point of view, you become immensely powerful in terms of influencing that person, in terms of maybe even selling to that person, because you understand their needs. You understand the factors that are really at the source of what they are doing. When you do that, your ability to convince another person increases by an exponential factor. Your ability to influence other people, your ability to get along with other people. So, this is what I'm talking about today. Put yourself in another person's shoes and you become immensely more powerful in terms of strengthening your relationship with that person, in terms of understanding that person, in terms of convincing that person, in terms of influencing that person. So that's what we're talking about. Now, there's a problem. One of the major problems is that our ego gets in the way. So if you are going to put yourself in another person's shoes, it actually requires a certain level of humility. Because our ego forces us to say, I am right and Eve is wrong. And I stand by what I say. And the ego is such that even if I say something that is not sensible, that is not logical, by my own reasoning, my ego, the pride that I have in what will force me to try and use reason, no matter how ridiculous, to justify that entrenched position. So if you are going to be a transformational person, if you are going to enhance your quality or your probability of achieving your goals, then you need to confront that ego. You need to make sure that you remind yourself that at the end of the day, it's in my best interest to be humble enough to put myself in another person's shoes, to listen to what they're saying, to understand them, and that way I'll be more empowered to influence that person. What are the benefits? Let's talk a bit about the benefits of putting yourself in other people's shoes, of different perspective. Number one is empathy. You become more empathetic when you put yourself in another person's shoes, because you now understand the factors that are influencing them. Before I came on the program, you were talking about the trending story about the mother who has left young twins in the care of a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, as much as I condemn this cannot be, justified in any way, shape, or form. It would be interesting to look at the situation in totality and see what are the factors, what is the perspective from this woman's point of view. Not so that we agree with her, but so that we seek a solution that is founded on understanding the factors that are influencing it. Because there are all sorts of factors that can influence. But I don't really want to go into this one because it's a very emotive issue. But empathy enables you to feel what another person is feeling because you're putting yourself in their shoes. And when you do that, you create rapport. You will feel understood, Eve, when I am able to identify with how you are feeling.
True.
And that's such a powerful position to be in. Whether we're talking of relationship as in a marital relationship, as in a romantic relationship, you will find that the relationship is stronger the more empathy there is in that relationship. And that empathy can be fueled and accelerated and magnified by putting yourself in the other person's shoes and understanding the situation from their perspective. This is the basis of what we call Ubuntu, Unu. Unu is about feeling for other people, and you can only feel for other people when you put yourself in their shoes. It's amazing how cruel we can be as human beings. Time permitting, I'll give you an example of a very personal example of how this came to my consciousness, that if we are not careful, we are actually doing more harm to people without realizing it, instead of being empathetic. The other benefit of different perspective is self-awareness. When you put yourself in other people's shoes and try and understand the situation from their perspective, it also helps you to understand yourself better. And when you can understand yourself better, you can manage yourself better. You can handle your weaknesses better. You can maximize on your strengths better, because you have taken time to get out of your own self and look at a situation from other people's point of view. So, for example, if maybe I'm constantly making a joke about you, Eve, that really rubs you the wrong way, and I consistently do it, and I'm not aware of this, and at some point I get out of my own mind and I look at the situation from your point of view, It will help me to understand you and how you feel. But it will also help me to understand me in how insensitive I can be in certain situations.
Okay.
So you will find that when you manage to do that action of looking at the situation from a different perspective, you will understand yourself better. Last, and I think most people are interested in this, the last benefit I want to touch on different perspective, is influence. Most of us are seeking to influence someone. You might be seeking to persuade someone to do something. You might be seeking to sell something to someone. You might be looking at customer care, where you've got somebody whom you deal with in business, and you want to understand them and to make sure that you recover from maybe a mistake you have made to them, but just caring for people. It might be teamwork. You want to work with somebody. It might be a partnership. It might be seeking a promotion in the workplace. Tell you what, by the way, that story about Mr. Loda, when we had that incident, when I understood where he was coming from, and I changed the way I did things, it was a turning point in our relationship. And a few years later, he recommended me for promotion.
Oh,
And-
wow.
And I was promoted from head of IT to a deputy executive director. So
Okay.
the thing is, when you can work with people, not even the sky is the limit, because this is what will help you get to the promised land. Is what will help you achieve your full potential. This is what will help you to get to achieve the purpose that God has given you. But it comes down to looking at situations from different perspectives. You then persuade people, you can sell better, you can handle customer care more effectively, you can be a better team player, you can partner with people more effectively, you can even influence your career progression more effectively. So when we are looking at this, there are basically 6 factors. Let's see. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we're still okay. Good. There are 6 factors that you may want to take into account. If you've got a pen and paper, I suggest you write these down. Number 1, if you want to understand somebody, to put yourself in their shoes, to look at things from their perspective, think about their background. What do you understand about this person's background? And how does that background influence the way the person sees? Of course, it's not an exact science. You might not know all the factors about how this person was raised, etc. But from the little that you know, what can you draw out of there about the person's background that it influences how they think, how they act, how they feel, what they like, what they dislike? So that's number 1. And you don't have to write an essay on it or a thesis. It can be just, a few points from a person's background and how they were raised. Number 2, challenges. Try and think about what are the challenges that this person is facing. What are the problems that they're facing right now in their life? Maybe from conversing with the person, maybe from observation, maybe from whatever other sources you have. You can just seek to understand what are the problems that the other person is facing. Number 3, from your perspective, from your understanding, what are the aims or desires or goals that this person has? What are they trying to achieve? Because if you can get to that, it's just making you that much more powerful in terms of understanding this person and then using that understanding to move to the next level. Number
Okay.
4, fears. What are this person's fears? Fears are really, really influential. A lot of times, the things we do in life are based on what we fear. So if you can understand this person's fears, it helps you significantly in terms of getting an appreciation of where they're coming from. And number 5, assumptions and beliefs. What are the beliefs and assumptions that this person has that are influencing that person's attitude, that person's perspective on the world, that person's assumptions, that person's views, that person's opinions, preferences? And finally, number 6, what are the values? What are the things that this person values? So in the case of the example that I gave you with my former boss, Mr. Loda, he valued responsiveness. Like the moment he sends a communication, an email, he valued instant or quick response. So responsiveness was significantly important to you. And if I had maybe a boss who had a different set of values, maybe he wouldn't have been affected as much. So these are the factors that you need to take into account when you're trying to understand the perspective of another person. Right. So if you want to move from reacting with anger to reacting with curiosity, you need to assume that different perspective. Because a lot of times we react instantly without seeking to understand what are the factors that are influencing the other person to behave this way or to say this or to do this. If you want to move from judging to understanding, you need that different perspective so that you're not instantly passing a judgment on someone, sometimes based on very scant information, on very superficial factors, but you put yourself in their shoes and you're understanding where they're coming from. If you want to move from criticizing to appreciation, and I'm not using appreciation just in terms of saying, wow, this is nice, but appreciation in terms of understanding, then you need to assume that different perspective. It will help you and free you from instantly criticizing something and getting to fully understand it. If you want to move from just being driven by your assumptions to working based on insight, then you need to assume that different perspective. So I was going to share with you a personal example.
Yes, you were, and I was looking forward to it.
Well, I have a daughter
right.
who is of mixed race.
Okay.
She's a colored.
All right.
And one day she came home crying. And I said, what happened? She said, as I was walking on the street, there's this woman who saw me and said, are you a colored or are you an albino?
Okay.
And there were some kids playing, and she said, and I'm on Mutsquinya. And okay, the kids didn't do it. She ran away. But there are things that we do as human beings where we really inflict pain on other people, and for some strange reason we are oblivious of it. So, for example, even with my daughter, there are people who go to Keda, you're Keda, but that is not that is not nice.
It's not.
Yeah, it ain't nice. If somebody comes to you and says, you were black, especially if they're of a different race, how would you feel? So for me, it's about putting yourself in another person's shoes so that you can understand them. And when you understand them, you have that empathy. And when you have that empathy, you are immensely powerful to build strong relationships. One of the curious and I would say weird feelings I ever had is when I went to Europe for the first time, way back in 1996.
All right.
For the first time in my life, I was in the minority. This was Dublin in 1996, and you could count on your fingers the number of black people you would meet on a single day. And I remember with my friends, we'd actually celebrate, oh, we've seen another African. I mean, it didn't care whether you're black American, right? It's another African.
It's another African, yes.
But it got me to put myself in the shoes of, say, people of different races who come here and how they feel when they're in the company of people who look different from them. Just that feeling of being in the minority is really strange, and it can feel very lonesome. And when you are not aware of it, you are oblivious and you would just react in ways that could maybe even worsen the situation. So, for example, imagine a situation where you've got a colleague who is from a different race and you are a bunch of guys, local guys, and at the drop of a pin, you just speak in your local language. And can you imagine how this person feels? But by putting yourself in another person's shoes, you see the situation from their perspective. You understand what they're going through. You are able to then use that understanding to build a stronger relationship. You are able to use that understanding to influence that person, and you are able to create mutually beneficial, more powerful relationships that are not only going to make you more productive, more profitable, but more impactful. So this is what I had for you today. If this resonates with you and you feel this kind of teaching, this kind of values I'm sharing would make a difference in your life, then I invite you to join the Success Family. To join the Success Family, all you need to do is send. It's a free group for people who are goal-oriented, who are purpose-driven, and who are mutually supporting each other to get to the promised land, to fulfill their potential, to fulfill their God-given purpose. So if you'd like to join, send the word JOIN, J-O-I-N, not joy. I have a lot of people sending me the word joy. This is automated, so it responds based on you sending the correct word. JOIN, J-O-I-N, to this number 0773 056 736. Let me repeat that number, 0773 056 736. Send the word JOIN, and we will welcome you with warm arms into the Success Family.
Right, Mr. Jonah Mungoshi, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming through this morning.
It's been a pleasure.
So, right, this is a segment we bring to you every Wednesday. We call it a Short in the Arm, where we have all the motivational talk with Joanna Mungoshi, who's a life success coach, management consultant, workshop facilitator, management or leadership trainer, and also a motivational speaker. So, do catch him next week around the same time, right here on Star FM, sounding good all the time. You check your time with me. It's 10. It's time for the news.
This is Zim Paper's Radio Broadcasting News.